Now there was a time when you loved me so, I couldn't do wrong. Now you need to know. See, I've been a bad man, and I'm in deep. Remember the time when I eat you up. Yeah, I was alive.
You are now experiencing War Radio, and this is the Ascend Conservatism Show. We are the oasis for unrepentant patriots, coming to you live every Monday night, right here on We Are America Radio, your grassroots connection for a better America. Now, with the election just 2 weeks away, we have a special show lined up for you all tonight. We document the Democrats' long history of rigging elections in our segment called The Liberal Education Annex. And in Dateline, we expose the hypocrisy on the left in this election cycle. And we shed some light on another media's dirty little secret. And to close out our Dateline portion, we big slap one of the Clinton crime family members. So without boring you with more teasers, let's get straight into tonight's blockbuster show.
The content, language, and opinions expressed in tonight's show are solely those of the original host and its contributors. The content, language, and opinions do not necessarily represent those of War Radio, the War Radio staff, or other hosts connected to this radio station or shows.
I see dead people.
Dateline. Headline breaking news with snark, provided to you by WikiLeaks.
Dateline.
Hypocrisy alert. This is a running segment on Dateline. This is where we expose the monumental hypocrisy of the left as well as those on the right. Being the campaign season, we sure have had a plethora of examples of hypocrisy to choose from.
That's the fact, Jack!
So we had to be very choosy as to what to present to you tonight. Otherwise, we'd be here all night, every night, right up until Election Day. But with the uproar from liberals about the Access Hollywood tapes of Trump and Billy Bush, it was a no-brainer on what we were going to talk about tonight in Hypocrisy Alert. Wait. That sound effect is just for the intro, you nimrods.
Okay.
So, let's just clarify one thing before we delve into this subject. We are not here to excuse Donald Trump's comments on that tape from 11 years ago. That's up to the electorate to decide what, if any relevance, they have for who they want as the next President of the United States. But, as usual, it's our job on the Ascend Conservatism Show to detail for you the faux outrage and sheer disgust of the left over these so-called locker room comments.
That's a fact, Jack!
While those comments were obviously demeaning to women, the shock from the left-wing media and Democrats in Washington was so disingenuous and hypocritical, it made us want to puke.
Don't throw up.
First off, let's start at the top. The President of the United States, as well as his wife, Michelle Obama, were aghast.
Because this was not just a lewd conversation. This wasn't locker room banter. This was a powerful individual speaking freely and openly about sexually predatory behavior and actually bragging about kissing and groping women, using language so obscene that many of us were worried about our children hearing it.
Now, her response was peculiar to us, since the Reverend who presided over her wedding to Barack once said this on the pulpit of that same church that they were married at.
Bill did us just like he did Monica Lewinsky. Monica Lewinsky. Monica Lewinsky. He was riding dirty, dirty, dirty.
And besides that, the Mooch has been quoted as saying this about the anti-police singer Beyoncé. Quote, "Beyoncé could not be a better role model for my girls." Unquote.
Say what?
That's right. Beyoncé, the one who constantly grabs her own crotch on stage, the one who married a misogynist punk rapper, Jay-Z, that has said in his songs things about women 1,000 times worse than Trump, is a role model for girls.
You're an idiot.
And the king hypocrite himself, Barack Obama, was so incensed by Trump's words that he forgot that he himself invited that same chauvinist pig, Jay-Z, to the White House, where not only did the rapper who made millions calling women bitches and hoes get a personal tour of the people's house, but Jay-Z got to sit in the president's seat in the Situation Room for a personal photo op.
This is bull. This is malarkey. This is outrageous.
The same Situation Room that Ronald Reagan, John F. Kennedy, and other presidents sat during national crises. The same Situation Room, by the way, that neither Obama nor Hillary Clinton were in during the 13-hour siege on our consulate in Benghazi.
What difference does it make?
So when you hear the left cry about some outrageous thing said by a Republican, or something they supposedly did, just look at who's whining the loudest, and expose their hypocrisy. Because when we do, we take their power away and remove all moral authority that they claim to have.
Dateline!
The media's dirty little secret. This is one of our listeners' favorite segments. This is where we expose the media's attempts to hide the truth, or at least spin it to fit their liberal agenda. In most of the segments so far, we have been focusing on news channels, so-called reporters, political pundits, and we even uncovered the insidious liberal propaganda from networks like CBS in an episode of The Good Wife. But tonight, we turn our eyes on social media. As you all know, the two major social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter, are owned by liberals and have been censoring conservatives for years.
That's the fact, Jack!
But something that just got noticed a few months ago, a new tactic on Twitter has all of us on the right furious. This stealth way of muting our messages of conservatism on the most active social media network in the world has been dubbed the shadow ban.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows.
After catching a lot of heat in the press for banning British conservative activist and Trump supporter Milo Yiannopoulos, and after having to explain squashing some people's First Amendment rights, the underhanded libtards at Twitter decided to sneakily block just the messages and not the people, hoping that those people trying to keep the biatch of Benghazi out of the White House would not notice that their messages were not reaching their followers as they were automatically supposed to do.
Hard to comprehend, but that's true.
Now this blatant attempt to silence dissenting views on Twitter for the Liberals candidate is happening, not coincidentally, right before the presidential election.
I'm shocked.
Now there is a source inside Twitter that confirmed the use of shadow banning of people for their political views. This insider spoke exclusively to Breitbart Tech, and his claim was corroborated by a senior editor at a major publisher.
That's a fact, Jack!
But that's not all Twitter is doing to manage the information that comes through people's timelines. Besides shadow banning conservatives, rendering our voices all but silenced, they are also determining what is trending on Twitter as well. For those of you who are not familiar with Twitter, the trending topics are the ones most talked about. Now the company does not choose these topics. It's sheer mathematics, driven by an algorithm. Whatever hashtag is used most at the moment is pushed up to the top of the list of trending topics. Sounds logical, right?
Right.
Wrong.
No!
It's not logic when the Twitter hierarchy manipulates the results of the most talked about hashtags so as to make the unaware user think that only one side of the political spectrum is getting bashed. I personally watched this happen myself just last week. Liberal users on Twitter were trying to promulgate the story about the Access Hollywood hot mic video of Donald Trump and Billy Bush, and they pushed the hashtag Trump Tapes up to number 1 on the trending list.
Wow!
So Trump supporters had had enough of this, and they all started using the same hashtag. Bill Clinton is a rapist.
Hello.
Now we don't judge, and as I was watching the trending list on Twitter myself, the Bill Clinton is a rapist hashtag steadily moved up the list and at one point was number 2. As it was just about to be the hottest trending topic on Twitter, displacing the Trump Tapes hashtag, all of a sudden, the hashtag Bill Clinton is a rapist disappeared from the entire trending list.
It's magic!
That's right. It magically disappeared.
Oh, no, come on now, baby.
Now, for those of you who don't use Twitter, trending topics move up when they are hot, when tweeted by more and more users. Then, when the interest starts to die down, the hashtag moves back down the list slowly until it disappears. A hot topic on Twitter has never, in the history of social media, simply dropped off the list.
That's a fact, Jack!
Especially when it was just about to take over the number 1 spot as the hottest topic on Twitter. But that just goes to show you who is trying to control the narrative, not only on the mainstream media, but social media as well. And there is good reason they are trying to control the hearts and minds right before the election. From a recent study, 62% of Americans get their news from social media, and 59% of Twitter users get their news on Twitter. Now, with an average of 313 million monthly active users on Twitter, that's 184 million people getting their news on Twitter.
Oh my God. Wow.
And that is a ripe opportunity for the progressive San Francisco-based company. Too tempting not to try to sway voters in probably the most crucial election of our lifetimes. And it also shows you exactly how high the stakes are for this election. And it's just 15 days from now. It's up to us, my people. Stay vigilant on social media, fight through the shadow bans, fight through the manipulations by the operators of the various social media platforms, make your voices heard no matter what, because our very freedoms are at stake on November 8th, and we cannot and we will not back down.
Amen, brother. Amen.
And that's Dateline, Part 1. We'll be back with Part 2 right after these very important messages. Stay tuned.
You're listening to War. We are America Radio, a place where conservatives, libertarians, and Tea Party Americans come together to get the real deal news. No filter, and a lot of patriotic spirit. We are America Radio.
from Iraq and Afghanistan. Our brave warriors are coming home, wounded. Some with wounds you can see, some with wounds you can't see. Wounded Warrior Project was created to support our men and women coming off the battlefield. Please help carry these warriors the rest of the way home. Get involved at woundedwarriorproject.org.
And we are back here on War Radio. Let's go straight into Dateline Part 2.
Dateline!
Hypocrisy Alert, Part 2.
¡Ay, caramba!
As we stated in Part 1, this political season is exploding with liberal hypocrisy. And one of the most outrageous cases is coming from the mainstream media, with a lovely twist of irony.
Oh, sweet irony!
With the WikiLeaks document dumps making the Democrats scatter and hide like cockroaches, as usual, they use their tried-and-true ploy to try to distract the masses, and that's to shoot the messenger and deflect from the message. While the leaks may or may not have come from hackers working for Russia, that's not the point. The truth, in the end, is what matters most of all.
And the truth shall set you free!
And what got liberals in the media and the Democrats in Washington, D.C. busted in our Hypocrisy Alert is the fact that while trying to put the focus on who leaked the damning information, instead of what the info says about their despicable tactics, they had the gall to be so offended in a foreign entity trying to influence the U.S. election. Forget the fact that exposing the truth never interferes in any election, but the sheer hypocrisy of the left claiming outrage about foreign influence on an election while they had no problem when President Obama sent his minions and our money to Israel to try to influence their election in 2014.
Hypocrisy, claiming to uphold morals and values while your behavior says otherwise.
Trying to unseat their prime minister, who was a thorn in Obama's plan to come to the aid of his buddies in Tehran, the death to America mullahs, and that being Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And not only did he send his people there, he funded their operation with United States government funds.
Shame on you, Mr. President.
As with all underhanded Democrat operations, you must follow the money.
Show me the money.
Show me the money! Show me the money!
Obama's State Department gave anti-Netanyahu group One Voice cash. One Voice trained student activists. Later, One Voice striked up a partnership with another anti-Netanyahu group called V15. Now, V15 is aided by a key staffer from the Obama's 2012 field operation. V15, a voter mobilization project, wants to, quote, disrupt the status quo, unquote. The status quo in this case was Netanyahu, Obama's nemesis, and his opposition to giving Iran billions of dollars and a pathway to a nuclear weapon.
Mr. President, this is ridiculous. There is no plan.
Now, while liberal PolitiFact tries to spin this as a coincidence, logic tells us that the money starts with Obama and goes to Israel and finally ends up in the hands of his own former staffer.
They're engaged in denial.
So to recap, Democrats and the liberal media do not have a problem with Obama sending our tax dollars to try to influence the election in a foreign country, but have a problem with a foreign entity trying to influence our election by simply exposing the truth.
Hypocrite, hypocrite, hypocrite.
But of course, Democrats, the party that did create the Ku Klux Klan. Why would they ever listen to the words of a great Republican? Why would they ever heed the call of the great Dr. Martin Luther King?
You died when you refused to stand up for right. You died when you refused to stand up for truth. You died when you refused to stand up for justice.
Tagline.
Bitch Slap of the Week. What some might call the most satisfying part of Dateline is here.
Dynamite!
This is where we administer instant justice. No media disinformation, no liberal spin, facts presented, and retribution given. This week's winner of the Bitch Slap of the Week, John Podesta.
Come on, what's the matter with you?
That's right. The man who has fed WikiLeaks with a treasure trove of dirt on the Democrats from his hacked emails is our coveted winner tonight.
Right on!
But before we start to beat the crap out of this scumbag, let's also thank him.
Thank you.
Thank him for being so monumentally stupid for putting all of the left's underhanded dealings in written form in his digital correspondence with all the low-life liberal usual suspects. Now, for those of you who aren't too familiar with this bottom feeder, he has been a D.C. lobbyist,
Come on, what's the matter with you?
the counselor to Democratic leader senator and tax cheat Tom Daschle,
What's the idea?
the founder of the Center for American Progress, a far-left think tank that's not only anti-Semitic, but funded by billionaire progressive Nazi sympathizer George Soros, and the group has been hell-bent on destroying the very fabric that makes this nation so great.
What's the matter with you?
And Podesta was also the chief of staff for President Clinton in his second term.
Bon vivant and world-class connoisseur of the booty.
Otherwise known as the Monica years.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Yeah. We believe you. Since we're already here, this one is for you, Bubba. You sexual predator. Now, we have bitch-slapped other Clinton crime family members in the past, like crooked Terry McAuliffe and Hillary Cleaner Lanny Davis. So Podesta is not alone in the bitch-slap Hall of Fame.
I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Podesta has been the Clintons' bagman for decades and has been a facilitator of almost everything underhanded the Clinton criminal organization has been involved with. And what do you expect? It all comes from where you come from. Podesta hails from the political cesspool of Chicago.
Ew. Smells like pee.
And that is why he was also so cozy with the Obama Cosa Nostra.
Come on, what's the matter with you?
He was a co-chairman of the Obama transition team back in 2008. And was then a special advisor to the new dictator-in-chief. And Podesta's lobbying firm had ties to the Obama regime.
I'm in this race to tell the lobbyists in Washington that their days of setting the agenda are over. They will not work in my White House.
Okay.
Now we have brought this DC insider here tonight for the bitch slap he's deserved for years, for his sheer contempt for the American people in general and specific groups such as Catholics, Jews, and gays, to name just a few. While there are way too many explosive emails from the WikiLeaks Podesta dump to talk about them here tonight, we do suggest that you go to thegatewaypundit.com and check out the detailed list of all of Podesta's WikiLeaks emails. Use them so you can educate the low-information voter as to how corrupt, sneaky, and what liars the Clintons are.
You're the one who has that power.
But with the election just 15 days away and Podesta being a running faucet of information that is feeding into the Trump campaign's rigged system narrative, we would like to offer healthcare advice for Podesta. No, not Obamacare advice, but life insurance. Because if he continues to be an anchor to Hillary's chances to becoming the next president, he just might end up like another Clinton family friend that outlived his usefulness. Vince Foster. It's people like John Podesta that work in the shadows in Washington, D.C., organizing policies in back rooms, never showing their true faces to the American public, that is at the core of the rot in the nation's capital. People like this slimeball that help curry favor up on the Hill with bribes, favors, and blackmail that get bad policy into operation from very bad people with only self-interests at heart, and not the American people's best interests. There has never been a better time in this great nation's history, never a more dire need than ever before, than now, because it is our kids' future as well as ours, and it is time that we finally drain the swamp. And that's Dateline for this day, October 24th, 2016. We'll be back after these very important messages. Stay tuned.
Since 9/11, more than 8,500 children under the age of 18 have lost a military parent, the heroes of this nation, in service to our country. What can be done for the families left behind after a loved one makes the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom? Hello, I'm Gary Sinise. While we can never adequately offer our gratitude to America's fallen service members or the families they leave behind, we can strive to make positive changes in their lives. That's why, along with the entire Gary Sinise Foundation, I'm so proud to partner with Snowball Express, the largest gathering of families and children of our fallen military heroes. Snowball Express is a top-rated 501c3 charity foundation that champions the future of the children of our fallen military heroes with communal healing. It connects families with one another through year-long efforts and culminates in a 5-day, 4-night extravaganza that they will never forget. And once you've seen the smiles on the faces of these children and their families, you won't either. It's impossible to truly comprehend the struggles these children and their families experience in the absence of their fallen fathers, mothers, husbands, and wives. But we must help them heal and find new hope for the future however we can. Entertainers, politicians, living heroes, year-round volunteers, charity partners, businesses, and grateful citizens across America have been inspired to help put together these joy-filled experiences while raising money and the spirits of those who have given so much.
We will hold our brave heroes in our hearts for the love they gave us, we have shared from the start. Every trip at Snowball is made to celebrate the life that our heroes lived. Our loved ones would not want us to sit and cry. They would want us to live life and to laugh at our heart's content.
That's what the efforts of volunteers and sponsors of Snowball Express do. Help those left behind to live lives that uplift and honor their fallen loved ones. Now we need your help. Your sponsorship is more important than ever. I'm Gary Sinise for Snowball Express. Thank you. You're going to make a difference.
And we are back here on We Are America Radio. You're listening to the Ascend Conservatism Show, and this is the Liberal Education Annex. Tonight's subject is one everyone is talking about lately, and that's voter fraud and rigged elections. With an entire political party in denial or lying about voter fraud, the facts are stacked high against them. Democrats have been stealing elections for decades. From John F. Kennedy, who famously got phantom votes from President Obama's former Chief of Staff's father, Richard Daley, and mobster Sam Giancana, to the massive voter fraud perpetrated by this administration that makes the 1960 election look like child's play. There were over 70,000 incidents of voter fraud reported by 5 p.m. election night in 2012, with over 97% of those being perpetrated by Democrats. This is why Republicans demand that voter ID be made mandatory in all 50 states. But of course, Democrats fight them with every fiber of their being, throwing everything at them from the kitchen sink to a full deck of race cards. Democrats cannot win most elections fairly, and definitely cannot win elections on their failed ideology. What's ironic about the debate over voter IDs is that Democrats claim racism and have the gall to compare it to the poll tax of the late 1800s. For those of you who aren't familiar with the despicable racist past of the Democrat Party, here is the Cliff Notes version. Democrats fought against the North in the Civil War so they wouldn't lose their slaves. Once they lost the war, they created the Ku Klux Klan in 1860 and then created Jim Crow laws in the South. These Jim Crow laws of racial segregation were enacted around 1876. These repugnant laws were finally weeded out of society when the Democrats lost their fight against civil rights for blacks in the mid-1960s. But the poll tax I referred to earlier was a way for the Democrats to try to deny poor blacks the right to vote by charging a tax every time they went to vote. Although this disgusting analogy from their past is par for the course for the party that plays the race card 6 days a week and twice on Sunday, it has no bearing whatsoever on the modern-day call for voter IDs, especially since most voter IDs are free. History shows that the Democrats are the masters of voter fraud. Back in the 1960 election that was about as razor-thin as it could be, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was handed the presidency by the corrupt Daley political machine in Chicago, along with help from mobsters like Sam Giancana. A famous story from the night of the presidential election against Richard Nixon, JFK's brother and campaign manager, Bobby Kennedy, called Richard Daley at midnight and asked, "How many votes do we have in Cook County?" To which Daley allegedly responded, "How many do you need?" There's a reason that Cook County, which encompasses the city of Chicago, is also called Crook County. This goes back to Daley's days as the top political overlord with his famous ballot box stuffing and election rigging. As most know, John Kennedy's father made the bulk of his massive fortune running bootleg moonshine during Prohibition. That is when he got in tight with mafia figures like Giancana. Joseph Kennedy Sr. was known as a gentleman mobster. Later on, when his son was running for president, Joe reached out to his old mob connections in Chicago, as JFK was behind in the polls, and it was these underworld figures that dragged JFK across the finish line. According to Sam Giancana's daughter, Joe Kennedy, who was a former ambassador and had connections to the Eisenhower administration, agreed to stop the Justice Department's efforts to extradite Santo Trafficante and Carlos Marcello, two prominent mob chieftains, in return for the mob's help in Chicago. Doesn't that sound familiar with today's FBI? So with Illinois in JFK's column with help from the Daily Crooked political aldermen and Giancana's Union goons, one more state was needed to steal the presidency away from Nixon. What better place than Texas? It was the home of JFK's vice presidential nominee and one of the dirtiest senators in Congress, Lyndon Johnson. The JFK LBJ ticket carried Texas by a scant 50,000 votes. with Johnson's operatives stuffing ballot boxes and his lawyers working overtime to get Nixon votes thrown out on technicalities. The fix was in. In one single case, Johnson's lawyers got 45,000 votes for Nixon thrown out because the voters had circled Nixon and had not crossed out all of the other candidates as required by law. But of course, the ballots that had circled JFK but not crossed out Nixon were allowed. And as frightening as that sounds, that was child's play compared to what the Obama campaign perpetrated in 2012. As I stated earlier, there were over 70,000 reports of voter fraud by 5 p.m. election night and tens of thousands reported afterwards. To state them all here would make this the longest Ascend Conservatism show ever. May I suggest that if you would like more information, please go to WorldNet Daily's website and their big list of voter fraud reports. For this, we'll just focus on Florida to give you an idea as to how voter fraud can steal a presidential election. Let's first preface this by clearing up a myth propagated by the left. Barack Obama did not beat Mitt Romney in a landslide. On November 6, 2012, President Obama had 3.2 million more votes than Romney. This large margin of victory can easily be explained as the majority of the margin, over 3 million of those votes, came from Los Angeles County, Cook County, and the 5 boroughs encompassing New York City. These 3 places were the bulk of the popular vote difference, as everyone knows, in these liberal bastions. The Obama Kool-Aid was flowing like the Mississippi River. Despite losing the popular vote 51% to 48%, Mitt Romney actually lost the presidency by only 333,908 votes, spread over just 4 battleground states: New Hampshire, Florida, Ohio, and Virginia. Besides having rampant voter fraud in all 4 of these states, and many others like Pennsylvania and Nevada, the Obama campaign had their main political operative, then Attorney General Eric Holder, working on the committee to re-elect the president. For a detailed and complete explanation of Eric Holder's using of the Department of Justice to help perpetrate voter fraud, please read my article on the News Ninja website called Indict Eric Holder. One of the ways Holder directly aided voter fraud was by suing states like Florida, which was trying, legally I might add, to remove dead people and illegals from the voter rolls. In the case of Florida, Holder and the Department of Justice delayed the purging of illegals and the deceased, otherwise known as the Democrat voting base, delayed it past the 2012 election, causing Obama to win Florida by 73,858 votes. This is the same Florida that the well-respected polling firm from Suffolk University actually left the Sunshine State a month before the election because, and I quote the director of Suffolk University Political Research Center, David Paleologos, quote, "Florida is painted red for Romney," unquote. The Obama campaign's voter fraud machine went into high gear after they heard that on national TV. Their vote-stealing apparatus was spread out all over the state, but it was most prevalent in St. Lucie County. This is where they stole the bulk of the votes, as they also wanted to get rid of the Republican Congressman Allen West, who was running for re-election in that district. A conservative black man scares the hell out of Democrats as it screws up their narrative of blacks needing liberals to survive. In St. Lucie, West lost by a little over 2,000 votes. St. Lucie had 175,500 registered voters, but received almost 248,000 votes on Election Day, a whopping 141% turnout. As you can imagine, these same tactics were spread out all over the battleground states, especially in Ohio, as Obama dubiously won districts 100% with 0 votes going to Romney. This is a feat that not even Saddam Hussein achieved in the 1990s when he was the only candidate on the ballot. The different Obama voter fraud tactics were from multiple voters like Meloise Richardson in Ohio that voted 8 times for the president, to rigged electronic voting machines that defaulted to Obama every single time, to driving around busloads of Chicago SEIU members voting in multiple districts multiple times. But where I think the majority of stolen votes came from were the theft of absentee ballots. There were too numerous to mention incidents of Republican voters being turned away from the polls on Election Day because they were told that they had already voted by absentee ballot, which of course they had not. Please take a listen to a radio show where they interviewed a poll watcher, Dara Fox, who I have spoken to personally, and what she saw in Virginia, another state that Suffolk University Political Research Center painted red for Romney, but after massive voter fraud, Obama, quote-unquote, won by 116,000 votes. Here's the clip.
One of our listeners, her name is Dara Fox, and she's on the line now. Dara, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine.
Good morning, Dara.
How are you?
Now, Dara, you were a poll watcher. I want to just set this up and go through some of the things that are in the email that you sent us. Mm-hmm. You were a poll watcher at the Elks Lodge on Minneville Road in Woodbridge on Election Day, right?
Yes.
And you were among, what, there were 3 Republican poll watchers and 2 Democratic poll watchers. Is that right?
There were 3 plus me, so there were 4 Republicans and 2 Democrats.
I got you. Okay. So over the course of the day in this email that you sent us, you laid out some things that you saw. You said that many of the people who came to that location to vote, you said many people said the name was incorrect on their ID to being because they'd been married or divorced. Is that right?
Yes.
And you said that many people said the address on their IDs were incorrect because, they had moved recently. Is that right?
Yes.
You said that many people who approached could not state the address that was on their ID or their current address.
Yes.
And you said that many people could not speak English and could not follow the directions of the state and name and address. That's, state your name and address is the standard question you asked, and they didn't understand, right?
Correct, and they were allowed to vote and allowed to go to the line anyway.
All right, now here's the thing that sort of got my attention. You said that many times the voter stated their age, but when you looked at them, they didn't look that age, right?
I had an app. Okay. I worked for Project Orca, and on the app it said, like, John Smith, age 42, and that person was obviously 18.
Okay.
I mean, couldn't possibly be 42.
And you saw that happen a lot?
Many times, yes.
All right, and then you say that this is the one that just, I went, what? Many times when I went to check off the voter as having voted, you found that the voter was already checked off as having voted.
Yes, and the person who was next to me, who I was talking to the most, she kept on saying, what should I do? They've already voted. It says that they've already voted. But the line was so long. It was so busy, and we were under strict instructions not to talk to the voter, so we were not allowed to interfere with the voting process.
So how often did that happen? How often did that happen where somebody came in and said, my name is so-and-so, so-and-so, and as you go to the list to check them off the list, you find, what? They're already checked off the list because, according to this, they've already voted.
Oh, I'm going to guess, for me personally, probably 30, 40 times.
Wow.
And was there anybody there at the polling place that you could report these things to, or you could take note of it and follow up?
We had a phone number to call, and it was such a chaotic mess with the lines that it was difficult to find a break. But one of the ladies who was having trouble with her getting her app working, she was making most of the phone calls into legal and into the headquarters. And
this would be the Romney campaign headquarters,
yes.
Right?
And one time I called them, and I just took a break. I was so frustrated. The line was stopped. They had to stop the voting line because there were too many people in the facility, and they stopped the voting line. They did this about 4 times for like 20 minutes, and I just went and observed the line, and I had to say there were probably about 300 people in line, and I was calling the Romney people, and I said, this is total voter fraud. It's rampant. I can't tell you how much voter fraud I'm seeing, and there was nothing they could do about it. I mean, it was just. I think the lawyer came over a couple of times, but didn't have a chance to speak to me.
Right now, there's a couple of things else I got to get to here. You said that while you were sitting there observing, that you're pretty sure you saw the same person voting twice, or there were cases where you heard the same name come up twice throughout the day.
And if it was this John Smith and there was more than one John Smith on the app, that would be okay. But it was a person who said their name, and I looked, and I'm like, oh, I already heard that and that name, and then I looked, and there was only one of those names, and so I couldn't check the person off again because they had already voted. So
the list as having voted, you saw that they had already voted.
Yes, there was already a check mark there. There also, the poll people would help the people out with their address. Like if they were struggling, they'd say, "Is it such and such a street on such and such a number?" And then the person would go, "Oh, yes, that's it."
Oh my gosh! So they were being led.
What's the point?
So I guess the real question I have for is, at the end of the day, do you feel like the voting process at the Elks Lodge there and on Minneville Road was fair? And was it clean?
No. If I had to guess, I would say, and I was not outside, so I cannot verify this, but there had to be people just being bussed in or being paid to vote or something. I mean, there were so many. If I had a chance to pull people out of line and say, "You're not the right age," or that's not your name, you're not obviously not Asian, and that's an Asian name, or you're, so on and so forth, then you can't state your address. You say you've moved, and you're just giving the address verbally without having to prove anything, and then getting in the line. I mean, if I had pulled those people out, I mean, I don't know what percentage it would have been, but it was a large percentage.
So you don't think it was right? You don't think that what you saw was above board?
No, I do not think it was above board.
Have you talked to the Attorney General of Virginia?
Yeah, I sent him an email and with exactly what I sent to you, and he got back to me and said that I needed to contact the Board of Electors, which I'm going to do.
All right. Well, would you keep us in the loop on what happens with this? Because if this is a little microcosm of what went on in the Commonwealth of Virginia on Election Day, I would say that there's some pretty interesting questions that should be asked.
Yeah, just one more thing. On Twitter, when I tweeted out what I saw, some other person who worked the polls got back to me and said she saw the same thing.
Absentee theft, in my opinion, was the key to Barack Obama's victory in 2012. This was perpetrated from what the Obama campaign called the cave. This was a massive tech warehouse where they claimed to have all the data on all voters throughout the country. It's also where it would be the easiest to pick and choose the easiest of Republican voters to steal their absentee ballots, where they would give Obama a vote he wasn't going to get while denying Romney a vote he was going to get. Do you see how easy it was to get to the 334,000 votes that got Obama reelected when all they had to do was flip 167,000 Romney votes? Of course, this is purely conjecture on my part. This is because the most transparent administration, most transparent campaign in history, and most arrogant would not allow even the biggest Obama cheerleaders in the media, like Chris Matthews of MSNBC, into the cave to see what the cave was all about. This is so out of character for such egos like Obama and his campaign managers David Plouffe and Joe Messina. It makes you wonder, what were they hiding in the cave, even from people in the liberal press who were 100% on their side? This is why there must be photo ID requirements to vote in all 50 states. And why I am even advocating that there must be a requirement for photo ID for absentee ballots as well. It's time for us to take a short break, but we'll be right back with more rigged elections after these very important messages. Stay tuned.
Thousands are wounded or disabled while serving our country. Some wounds can be invisible, but they are no less painful and make it difficult to transition back to civilian life. 20% of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom soldiers return home suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. In addition, there are an alarming statistics of suicide and family abuse facing veterans returning to civilian life after military duty. Pets for Vets believes that companion animals can be the life-saving therapy or friend that many returning servicemen and women need. Over 5 million dogs and cats are euthanized every year in shelters across America. The Pets for Vets goal is to give back to those who have given everything for our country and to say thank you.
Oh my goodness!
Pets for Vets uses the power of unconditional love and companionship that dogs offer to rebuild the lives of U.S. servicemen and women. Shelter dogs that need attention and love and are facing certain death are specifically selected for each veteran to match his or her personality. They are then taught good manners using positive reinforcement to fit into the veteran's lifestyle. Each dog is healthy, up to date on vaccinations, and comes with all of the equipment needed to start a new life with a veteran. Together, the soldier and his or her Pets for Vets dog take their first steps on the way to recovery and integration back into society. Medical studies have shown that companion animals significantly improve mental and physical health, including reducing stress, depression, and anxiety. I have seen firsthand the positive impact Pets for Vets dogs have had on veterans.
This is probably one of the greatest days I've had in a long time.
The veterans and their dogs become constant companions and now have comfort and security.
You are listening to War Radio. This is where we assassinate liberal lies with documented facts and obliterate moderate Republicans who want to join their side. We are America Radio.
And we are back right here on War Radio. That's We Are America Radio. And this is the continuation of the Liberal Education Annex. Now, the arguments against a mandatory picture voter ID is so pathetically weak. There is absolutely no disenfranchisement against any serious number of voters. When you look at the things that one needs to do in everyday life that requires a photo ID, it makes you think. Who are these masses of people liberals cry about that will be denied their right to vote because of a voter ID? Let's take an analytical look at the imaginary person that will get their right to vote denied if they do not have a photo ID. This typical, phony straw man that the left created to perpetrate this ridiculous narrative of disenfranchisement is supposed to be poor. Their words, not mine. So to join liberals in their obsession with creating imaginary people, let's call this person Julia. So we can assume that since Democrats say Julia is poor, she doesn't have the money to even fly on a plane, rent a car, purchase a car, register a car, or even drive a car, apply for a business license, apply for a credit card, or apply for a building permit because all of these luxuries require a photo ID. Another luxury Julia can't partake in, she can't purchase any tobacco products, nor can she purchase liquor. Since those entertainment products are off limits, she might as well as give up on mature video games because Julia can't rent or buy them without a photo ID. So since Julia needs money to live on, she must try to get a job to survive, right? Well, Julia can't get a job, or for that matter, even open up a bank account to keep money she would earn if she could get a job, because you can't do either without a photo ID. So Julia can't open a bank account, but she also cannot write a check from anyone else's account, nor can she cash any check made out to her from somebody else's account. In the meantime, Julia can't even rent an apartment or home to live in without a photo ID. Julia can't even rent a hotel room to live in even if she won the lottery to pay for the room, because a hotel requires a photo ID. But also, you can't even buy a lottery ticket without a photo ID either. Nor can she try her luck in a casino either without a photo ID. Now, if Julia wants government assistance for a place to live or food stamps to eat, forget it. They both require a photo ID. So she doesn't have the means to earn or receive money, but she also can't apply for welfare or unemployment insurance without a photo ID either. Nor can she, of course, apply for Social Security. So Julia doesn't even have a place to live, no means to buy food, or get government assistance. What if poor Julia gets sick? She cannot apply for Medicaid or can purchase medicines that require a prescription without a photo ID. And she can't even buy some over-the-counter medications because they also require a photo ID as well. Nor can she sign up for Obamacare without the photo ID because it's needed to get a Social Security card to get Obamacare. So Julia can't get a job or receive government handouts. Well, at least she can live off the land. Or maybe not. Julia cannot try to sustain herself by hunting or fishing because both of these actions require licenses that require a photo ID to apply for. But most of voter IDs across the country are free, so poor Julia can afford them. And the kicker in all this is that if Julia wants to protest being disenfranchised with the #1 group that is fighting against voter IDs, the NAACP, poor Julia can't protest either. To join them in a protest against voter ID laws, the NAACP requires a photo ID as well. So Democrats want us to believe that there are thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands of Julias that don't have a simple photo ID that they can't vote if it's required. But they can't explain to us how they eat, drink, or even survive without the ID that is needed for even the most basic facets of everyday life. This is obviously ridiculous because it is such a minuscule number. It just doesn't make sense that disenfranchisement is behind this rabid, foaming at the mouth opposition to voter IDs by Democrats. The only thing that makes sense is that Democrats want to continue perpetrating massive voter fraud that they have perfected to a science and that they depend on to get elected. Nor can Democrats explain why a dirt poor, third world country like South Africa can have a mandatory voter ID and the greatest nation in the world cannot. With a smidgen of the infrastructure and a non-existent mass transit system, not only do they have a voter ID requirement, but, when alive, Nelson Mandela endorsed the mandatory voter ID. Was he a racist? Nor can Democrats explain away Taipei Mendoza Filomena. Taipei is a 117-year-old Peruvian mountain woman who made her way down from the mountain where she lives and got her voter ID. Yes, Peru, another third world, dirt poor country, has a mandatory voter ID while the most progressive country in the world does not. Since the election is only 15 days away, obviously it is too late to get voter ID laws passed now. But I want all of you out there who just heard how the slimy Democrats rig elections using illegals as well as dead people and stolen absentee ballots to promise me that no matter who wins the election, that you will fight along with me and the organization True the Vote to get strict voter ID law in all 50 states. Then, and only then, can we truly have elections in the greatest country in the world that are 100% honest and not rigged by the crooks. Now, as we have seen in recent revelations from James O'Keefe and his team at Project Veritas, showing how Democrats have orchestrated voter fraud in the past, we can be sure that they will use the same tactics that stole the White House just 4 years ago. This November 8th, you have to be vigilant. Be prepared. Call your local GOP headquarters and write down all the phone numbers you need to report voter fraud. Do not get intimidated by the thugs that they have sent out to Trump rallies for bird dogging. They will surely be at the polling places as well this year. And do not let your vote or other Republicans' votes get stolen again. Do not give up your vote if someone has fraudulently voted using your absentee ballot. The Democrats have been in charge of at least 2 of the 3 parts of governance in Washington, D.C. for 8 of the last 10 years. And with the Obama disaster of the last 8 miserable years, enough is enough. We must take back the White House as a first step to taking back our country from the liberal disease that has plunged us into less full-time jobs, more poverty, less personal freedoms, more national debt, less of us in the workforce, more of us on food stamps, and a misery index not seen since the 1970s. The time is now, And don't let our country and our futures be stolen once again. And that is the Liberal Education Annex for today, October 24th, 2016. We'll be back right after these very important messages. Stay tuned.
What is wrong out there? We have done nothing wrong other than to do what they have done for years, and that is protest. And they think that we should sit down and shut up, and that is ending right now. Barack Obama is a radical. We should not be afraid to say that. We have an obligation to fight back. When he was at Harvard, he was advocating for the worst of the worst to join the faculty.
Are you insane? Are you so, is your ideology so strong that when Acorn in almost every office except for one, are you so insane that they help them create 501c3s and say, for this underage, Mike Madden, for this underage prostitution ring where we're going to get these 14-year-old girls, it's called sex slavery. You're supposed to be liberal and care about this shit.
War. And we have just run out of time on tonight's Ascend Conservatism show. I want to thank all of you out there for joining us. And don't forget to fight for your voter rights this November 8th. And I want to remind all of you out there, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CFJ. Go to Facebook at Ascend Conservatism. You can download our Politipics at Pinterest on the Liberal Education Annex. And you can now check us out on Instagram at CFJ_AC. Thanks again for showing up tonight. We had a great time putting the show together for you. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great Monday night, a wonderful week ahead. This is CFJ signing off.